All right, so the Browns, they're up against the Tennessee Titans at half here. Shedeur Sanders looks really, really good. Probably one of the better halves quarterback has had for the Browns this season so far. We do probably have to keep in mind that this is against a Tennessee Titans team that does have one win, that is in complete rebuild mode. And, it's not this isn't a good team, so this isn't it's still promising for Shedeur Sanders, but this isn't against a top quality team, so I'm not exactly excited about it, but it does show promise. I'll talk a little bit about that half, but first, so the college football playoff rankings came out this morning, Selection Sunday, and Rudy's down bad. Notre Dame is down bad. And it looks like they're going to have to join a conference, which is really funny because, for years and years and years, Notre Dame and their fans and their athletic board and all those kind of things have said that they will never join a conference and that the money is too good. Well, Notre Dame, you have 2 losses and you just got put out of the playoff after the committee has you ranked above Miami for the entire time the rankings were coming out. Notre Dame was ranked ahead of Miami. They should not have been. I think the committee kind of put themselves in that little predicament. I think if the committee had Miami ranked above Notre Dame, then we would have, this would not have been a big controversy. But they did, and it was a controversy, and people were calling for it, and finally we got what we wanted. Notre Dame is not in the playoffs. They are the first team out of the playoff, and it looks like Notre Dame is not going to be able to get by beating Air Force and Army and Navy and every other bad Group of 5 team that they play every year. And that's really good for the sport of college football. Regardless if you are a Notre Dame fan or not, Notre Dame needs to join a conference. In every other sport that Notre Dame is somewhat decent in, they're in a conference. And it's mostly ACC. I think there's another one that they're in that I don't know. But it's mostly ACC. So it makes sense for Notre Dame to join the ACC. Now, is Notre Dame probably getting on a sinking ship by joining the ACC? Probably. It's probably a lot easier for Notre Dame to go to the ACC, though, especially since all their other sports are already have somewhat at least ties to the ACC. Now, Notre Dame football does have ties to the ACC. They're just not a conference, not in the conference. They're not a member of the conference. And if Notre Dame was in the ACC, they win the ACC. They might still lose to Miami at the beginning of the year because Notre Dame was still kind of struggling to find their identity, but that's not a non-conference. That's a non-conference game. Notre Dame has time to find their footing, and maybe that game, maybe they don't even play Miami this year. You never know. So I get the. Never mind. I don't get Notre Dame's frustration because you put yourselves in your own predicament right now. Now Notre Dame is going to play a meaningless bowl game and get all the money from that. So great, good, congratulations, guys. You are probably one of the top 5 best teams in college football, and because you are too scared to join a conference, you are not in the playoff. Notre Dame would have easily beaten by multiple scores Virginia or Duke. And because they are too scared to join a conference. Fun fact, Notre Dame is winless in conference championship games. Notre Dame in football, they are winless in conference title games. Now, you can say all you want about Ohio State and how they lost to Indiana yesterday. Ohio State has won conference title games. Notre Dame has not. Notre Dame is 0-1 in conference championship games in their history. In their entire history as a football program, they have never won a conference title. They lost to Clemson in 2020. The same Clemson team that lost to Ohio State by multiple scores and Ohio State put Clemson back 10 years. And Clemson has never been the same since. So it's so gratifying to watch a Notre Dame team that has been ducking competition and, not wanting to join a conference because they're too scared. And they're saying that it's money, but in every other sport, they're in a conference, except football. And maybe this forces Notre Dame into a conference, and maybe it doesn't, and maybe Notre Dame goes a few more years. I think it's unlikely that they'll miss the playoff again next year. But maybe they do, and maybe the committee finally is like, okay, Notre Dame, we're not going to take you seriously until you join a conference, and it forces Notre Dame's hand, and they have to join either the ACC, the Big Ten, or the SEC. Probably either the Big Ten or the ACC, just because Notre Dame does have rivalries with like Michigan State and Michigan and Purdue. Among others, I know and USC. I completely forgot about USC, but they have USC as well. So the Big Ten would be adding another a great team, a blue blood of the sport, and that would be great. But Notre Dame does have a lot more ties to the ACC as a conference than the Big Ten. The specific teams Notre Dame has the ties to, yes, but a specific conference, if you're just calling conference by conference, Notre Dame has more ties to the ACC than the Big Ten. So that's my kind of 2 cents on that. I definitely think, if I'm thinking not as an Ohio State fan, and I was just ranking teams, I would have put Georgia over Ohio State. And this is not for the record because Ohio State, I mean, it's a little bit of that as a selfish Ohio State fan, but this is not because Georgia has an easier path to Ohio than Ohio State does. They eventually, if Ohio State and Georgia win both of their games in the semi or the quarterfinals, they end up playing each other. So regardless, they play each other. Even if they were, if Ohio State was 3 and Georgia was 2, they would still play each other. But I think Georgia has beaten every team that they've played this year. Ohio State cannot say that. Georgia has won a conference championship game. Ohio State can't say that. Ohio State did lose to the better team. Ohio State lost to Indiana. Georgia lost to Alabama. But Georgia just blew out Alabama by 21 points. So, I don't know. I personally would have put Ohio State below Georgia. I would have had, Indiana 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Texas Tech 4. I don't think that this is necessarily a big issue I have with it. Just something that I would do. Also, another thing that these are really the 2 things. So the Georgia Ohio State thing I would change, and the Ole Miss and Texas A&M. I would swap those as well. I think Texas A&M, because they at least had a shot to get in the SEC championship last week. They controlled their own destiny. They were undefeated up until the Texas game last week. And Ole Miss, I view Texas A&M to be better than Ole Miss, especially because Lane Kiffin is gone at Ole Miss and all that drama. I think Ole Miss will win their first round game against, I think it's Tulane. It's either Tulane or James Madison. I can't remember. I think it's Tulane though. But Ole Miss will win that. It's in Ole Miss, and they'll win that easily. But then they got to go play Georgia, and Georgia's streaky, so they got a shot. If Georgia is kind of what they did last year, and Georgia is, they come off the bye and they're slow and, different circumstances, of course, because Gunnar Stockton has more experience at quarterback and, they have a lot more time to prepare. And Notre Dame is a better team. Last year's Notre Dame team was probably better than Ole Miss. So I don't even think probably. Notre Dame last year is better than Ole Miss. I don't think anyone is denying that. Even with Lane Kiffin, I probably think I'd take that last year Notre Dame team over this year's Ole Miss team. But That is my thing with the playoffs. I think they got the teams right. Every team that is in the playoffs deserves to be in the playoff. I don't think there was anybody that was left out that deserved to be in. Maybe BYU has an argument, but Notre Dame definitely does not have an argument. They lost. They don't lose to Texas A&M in Miami, and schedule some other people. Notre Dame's second best win, so Notre Dame's best win is probably USC. Their second best win is Navy. You made that bet, Notre Dame. So you got to lie in it. Sorry. Not really, though. So, yeah, that's really it for college football. Ohio State will play the winner of Texas A&M and Miami in the Cotton Bowl that is in Arlington. I don't know. That's weird for me. I definitely think that Miami and Texas A&M is going to be a good game. That should be I think it's on a Friday too. It's the first game of the playoff, I think, this year. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think I like Ohio State's chances regardless of who wins that game. Then they probably play Georgia, and then we will see what happens because Oregon is going to beat, I think it's James Madison. So Oregon will beat James Madison in Eugene. The Oregon-Texas Tech game, that's going to be the next round. That's huge. Because if Oregon can beat Texas Tech, then they play probably Indiana. Because Indiana plays the winner of Bama and Oklahoma. So if they play Indiana, I don't know if Indiana beats Oregon again. And I get the last time Oregon played Indiana, it was in Eugene, and Indiana handled them. It's really, really hard to beat a great team, an elite team, twice. So if I'm Indiana, I'm rooting for Oregon to lose to Texas Tech. Because Texas Tech, their offense isn't great, their defense is really good, but Mendoza just beat the best defense in college football yesterday. So, that kind of thing is I'd be more comfortable if I was Indiana playing Texas Tech than I would be Oregon. Ohio State playing Georgia. If they get to this point, upsets can always happen. Ohio State could always lose to either Texas A&M or Miami. Ole Miss could honestly beat Georgia. They could. Am I picking it? Absolutely not. But they could. But it's tough. College football's tough. It's really hard to predict. So yeah, if I'm Indiana, I'm rooting very, very hard for Oregon to lose against Texas Tech. I don't think they're losing to James Madison. I don't think anyone is predicting Oregon to lose to James Madison, especially at home. And yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Now with the Browns game. The Shedeur Sanders looks really, really good. Defense is kind of having a little bit of an off game. Cam Ward was fooled by Devin Bush. The Browns defense, but especially Devin Bush with the interception. Quinshad Judkins, the long run, he was out of bounds. He stepped out of bounds at like the 15-yard line. The refs did not, for whatever reason, overturn that spot, and they put the Browns on the 5, and the Browns did end up scoring. But that was a bad call by the refs. That was whatever. Sanders is having a pretty good game. He did have the intentional grounding call, which I know a few Browns fans, especially in the stadium, did not like. It was grounding. Fanon was over here, and Shedeur Sanders threw the ball over here by those offensive linemen. Fanon was on the other side of them. So I get it, and it didn't cross the line of scrimmage either. So that was grounding by rule. That's grounding. So, it's cool. But that will... there's not a lot to really talk about. Browns defense is kind of having an off game. Myles Garrett did get a sack. I think they're going to credit him with only half a sack, though. So he's getting closer to that record. Cam Ward looks okay. He looks like a rookie. So we'll see about that. And it's whatever. So the Browns, they're up against Tennessee. We'll see what happens in the second half. I think this is where Judkins kind of breaks a few runs. They've gotten him. He's been chipping at that Tennessee line. I wonder what happens when Tennessee gets kind of tired and Judkins can break free. Sampson is also back. Sampson did get injured in the 49ers game last week, so we will see how much of a factor he plays in the second half. But Judy did have a touchdown catch that was really, really good. Njoku did have a touchdown catch, but he did get injured. We'll see what happens with that. Offensive line still does not look great, but the Browns do have a bunch of guys out today with a bad offensive line already, and add injuries into the mix, it gets worse. Sanders looks really good. But yeah, that's really it for today for halftime. This was just giving my halftime a few predictions for the college football playoff as well, and yeah, I'll be back for postgame.